constitution. So today I will be discussing with you the concept, origin, nature, justiciability, or different types of the fundamental rights, as to how this has been put in the constitution and why this is required for the enjoyment of a life of a human being. So being student of human rights department, you must also be aware of various human rights which are available to the human being, and why these rights are made available to the human being, and what is the history of these rights. So when we talk about the rights concept under the Constitution of India, we have to look back as to, I mean, one thing also I have to ask you, how many of you are comfortable in English? Because in classroom it is very easy that when I speak, then I can understand from your expression that whether you are getting me or not. Then I switch over immediately from Hindi to English and English to Hindi. But here I am not able to understand as to whom I am talking about and who are getting me or who are understanding what I am talking about. So if there is any problem in understanding English, then again you can, you can ask me. So one message I got that comfortable in both the languages, so there is no problem. I can speak on. But anytime you can stop me if you are not getting what I'm talking about. You can stop me and you can ask me in between, because I'm not reading anything. I'm just speaking to you. So whenever and wherever there is nothing like that कि मेरा lecture टूट जाएगा और मैं आगे नहीं बोल पाऊंगी. So you can stop me anytime, anywhere when you are not getting my point. Okay. And don't hesitate, because the purpose of a teacher is just to convey, and if I'm not conveying properly, then there is no use of talking to you all. Okay, so you can speak, you can talk, you can stop me anytime, every time. So today I'm just going to give you an overview about the concept and origin, nature, etc. of the fundamental rights which are required, because Constitution of India is considered not only to be a social document, it is a document which is meant for the people of India. The very 5 initial words, "We the people of India," in the preamble, speaks the entire story, and that's why those people, they are also enjoying the fundamental rights in part 3rd of the Constitution. So you see that the entire syllabus of your this 102 paper is mostly having a contribution of the fundamental rights. The maximum units are covering only the fundamental rights, besides other topics in 5th module as well as in 1st module. So all the 3 other modules are related to the fundamental rights. Now, when we talk about the fundamental rights, so one thing is important about the rights, that there are different types of the rights. There is not only the fundamental rights, but you may also have come across with this natural right, human right, fundamental right, legal right, moral right. Okay. So the first point is that do you understand the difference between all these rights? The natural rights, the fundamental rights, the human rights, the moral rights, and the legal and other statutory rights. So there are different types of the right. So every type of the rights are having different origin and different value, different importance also. When we talk about the natural rights, these are the rights which are said to be one of the oldest rights which were available to every person concerned. And these are the rights which are said to be inalienable rights. Besides human rights and fundamental rights, natural rights are also said to be inalienable rights, because these are the rights which are independent of any statute. These rights are independent of any statute, means that they are available to human being, and which are not mentioned here and there, but they are being enjoyed because you have taken birth in the human race. And similarly, these natural rights were later on also known as the human rights, which you find in the Declaration of 1948, Human Rights Declaration of 1948, which also speaks about the human rights. And those human rights, though it has been defined in the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993, which speaks under section 2D, equality, liberty, fraternity. These are the human rights. But if we talk about the UDHR of 1948, then you will find that these are the rights which are inalienable, and the courts have expressed these rights that they are available to the human being by virtue of being born in the human race. So because we have taken birth in the human race, and that's why those rights which are available to us, those are called the human rights. So whatever rights you enjoy, those are in the category of the human rights. So first rights, natural rights, independent of any act, statute, they are not mentioned. Human rights, you are enjoying these rights by being born in the human race. Those are declared rights in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Later on, also, we can say they have been also incorporated in various covenants and other acts of various states. For example, in India, we have a Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. In UK, they have a Protection of Human Rights Act of 1998. Similarly, in other countries also, who are the party of the United Nations, who are the state party of the United Nations, who have the parties of various regional communities like European community, African community. So they all have gone through enactment of these fundamental rights as the human rights in their country as a specific statute. So this is the second type of the right. First is natural right, other is the human right. Then when we talk about the moral rights, so moral rights were those rights, again those rights were not mentioned initially, and these were the rights which we find in our country, because India is having the oldest tradition of more than 5,000 years. So in history we read this thing that India is having a oldest cultural and traditional values, and those values were known as the moral values. So these are considered to be the moral rights. These were considered to be the ethical rights. Now, with the advent of the civilization, we see that some of these moral and ethical rights have also been incorporated in the statute. For example, if we talk about the moral rights, then in IPR, intellectual property rights, some of these rights have been incorporated as a moral right. You cannot steal the things which have been done by the other person. This is a moral right, but it is also the part of the intellectual property, a copyright and a patent right. You cannot do this. Similarly, in plagiarism also, you see what is plagiarism, that you cannot copy from the other. So these are the rules which are set in the name of the ethical rights. So the other type of the rights which are known as the moral rights, your moral right or the moral duty, that is correlative. Your duty is towards your parents have the right towards the son. So these are the moral rights which were in existence from the time immemorial, but those were not initially enacted rights, but now these are put under some of the statute. For example, 125 of the CRPC, okay, that speaks about the right of the maintenance, and that is initially it was a moral right, but later on it was considered that it is not fulfilled by the person concerned, the husband or the children, whatever they are. So it has to be enacted in a particular law, and that's why we see that moral rights to some extent are also incorporated through the statutory provisions. Then another type of the rights are known as the legal rights. Okay, so legal rights are those rights which you find under a specific act or statute. For example, if we talk about the consumer rights, now being user or being a customer of certain goods or certain property, then you are using that thing. Then if that property, that goods, that product which has been manufactured is not up to the mark, either in quality or in quantity, then a right that comes or accrue, that is known as the consumer rights, and one can go directly to the consumer forum for the remedy of that right. So these are known as the legal right or the statutory right. Similarly, right to vote is a statutory right, right to enter into a contract is a legal right, right to mortgage is a legal right. So These are known as the legal rights. The remedy is available under a specific statute. So this is not the only thing, but there are various other rights which are known as the legal rights, and these legal rights are said to be available under a specific statute. Then comes to the fundamental rights. Now, when we talk about the fundamental rights, then we find that why these rights are said to be the fundamental. Why these rights are said to be the fundamental rights. So the very point is that human being is having various capacities. A human being is having various capacities, and to unfold those capacities, it is required that he or she must have certain rights through which one can show in the society, one can live a life in a society which can be giving that unfolding of those capacities which are available in a human being. For example, if I talk about the right to freedom of speech and expression, this is a fundamental freedom under Article 19(1)(a). Now, suppose if this freedom is not made available to the human being, to a citizen or to a person as the case may be, then I am having a good oration, I am a good singer, I can do wonders by showing this art, but if this art is not available, if this right is not available to me, then how I can do this thing? So this is my capacity, and to unfold, to open, to bring my capacity in front of others, it is required that some rights must be made available. And that's why these fundamental rights, if you go through the entire part 3rd of the Constitution, you see that all these rights which are mentioned in part 3rd are those rights which can bring you before the others, which can bring your capacities out of your, or which can bring your intellectuality out for the other person. So that's why these are the fundamental rights which are available to the citizen or to the person as the case may be. I'll be talking later on this point also. So as I told you that when the Constitution was being drafted, you all know that 9 December 1946 was the date when the Constituent Assembly met for the first time for drafting the Constitution, and it continued till 26th November 1949. So during this period, 9th December 1946 to 26th November 1949, a lot many debates, reading, and the things regarding making of the Constitution, drafting of the Constitution continue. So everything that is put in the Constituent Assembly debates, 12 volumes of the CAD, that is there, and at the same time making of the Constitution, that is B. Shiva Rao, is a very good book in 5 volumes. That is also very important to understand as to how and when the Constitution was being made. So when the Constitution of India was being drafted at that time, regarding these fundamental rights, you see that the American Declaration of Independence of 1786, which was drafted by Jefferson, and the draft of this rights of the men, the rights declaration of the rights of men in the French Revolution of 1787, the American Constitution of 1787 drafted and forced in 1789. These all were having an impact besides the Magna Carta of 13th century, that is 1210. So all these were having an impact on the writing of part 3rd of the Constitution, that is the fundamental rights particularly. And what we see is that in American Constitution, that was also under the slavery of the Britishers, but when it got independence, it has drafted its Constitution in 1787 and it enforced in 1789. But the very important thing about the US Constitution was that in 1789, when it was enforced, there was nothing like a fundamental rights chapter. There was nothing like a rights chapter in that. And in the initial 2 years of the enforcement of US Constitution, they thought that there must be a fundamental rights in the Constitution of the US, and that's why the initial 10 amendments were brought in 1791, And these 10 amendments were nothing but Bill of Rights. Various rights have been given to the US citizens also. So we see that the US Constitution is the oldest written constitution of a federal democracy. And after that, in India, we see that ours is the lengthiest constitution. Why ours is the lengthiest constitution? This is also very important because we know that India was under the slavery of the Britishers, and for more than 2 centuries the Britishers were here. And India was being governed last time in 1935 Government of India Act. So that Government of India Act is considered to be the basis of the Constitution of India also, because maximum parts of the Government of India Act 1935 are also incorporated in the Constitution of India. And that Government of India Act 1935 was not having the fundamental rights chapter. Okay. So there was a dire demand from the people in India that they need the liberties, they need the rights, and that's why when the constitution was started for its drafting, there was a demand that the rights chapter must be there in the Constitution of India, because you see that in 1930 Simon Commission has submitted its report, and Simon Commission report was started with this, that they are demanding the liberties, they are demanding the rights. They means Indians, they are demanding the rights and liberties. So this liberty and right would only be a abstract declaration, because until and unless these rights would be executed, then there is no use of the right. And in 1930 they were not thinking of giving independence to India, and that's why they said, why they are claiming for the rights? There cannot be any right in abstract. These will be only declarations. So these declarations are of no value. There will be no legal use of those declarations. So in 1930 that was totally prohibited, or we can say neglected and refused in 35 Government of India Act. That's why there was nothing like fundamental rights in that Government of India Act. And when the constitution was being drafted, maximum part had been incorporated in the constitution from the Government of India Act. And that's why we see that ours is the lengthiest and the biggest constitution, because we have only single constitution. We have one constitution for the entire India, while in US they have different constitutions. One is the US Constitution, and all the states in United States, they are having their independent constitution. So in Indian Constitution it is lengthy because the governance and the other provisions relating to a state are also part of the main constitution. So it made it more and more lengthy. But everything is written because the constitutional authors, the makers of the constitution, they just didn't want it this provisions, or we can say discretion, will be given to the future governance. So everything is to be written in the constitution, and that had made the constitution very lengthy. So now you see that ours is a constitution which was enacted after the middle of the 20th century, that is 1948 onwards. And you see that there are other constitutions in the world also. In various other countries, they have also drafted their constitution after 1948-45 onwards. And they were not having that constitution. They have enacted their other constitution, 1, 2, 3 constitutions. See just your neighbor Nepal, how many constitutions they have made. Sri Lanka, they have made various constitutions. But Indian Constitution is survived and is surviving and shall survive because of the provisions which are there in the Constitution of India. So regarding this fundamental rights, when we talk about the fundamental rights, then in this historical background of the Constitution of India, you see that British rule was in India, demand for the rights were there, and when the Constituent Assembly was appointed, then there were certain subcommittees also appointed. And one of the subcommittee was on the fundamental rights, the subcommittee on the fundamental rights. So the job for writing or drafting for the fundamental rights was conferred upon this subcommittee on the fundamental rights. And when that subcommittee had submitted its recommendation on the fundamental rights, they have brought many rights in the constitution, for the constitution. Now, when the reading of these subcommittee's recommendation on fundamental rights was going on, at that time it was debated that India is not in a situation at that time to make all these rights available to the person concerned. So these rights cannot be justiciable, these rights cannot be enforceable at all, so that must be again drafted. So what the subcommittee on fundamental rights did is that it has divided the entire fundamental rights in two groups. One group is known as the fundamental rights enforceable and justiciable. The second group is known as the fundamental rights non-enforceable or non-justiciable. So the very point of justiciability and non-justiciability of the fundamental rights is that if it is justiciable, one can directly approach to the court of law for the remedy. If there is any violation, one can reach to the court of law. But if it is not justiciable, if it is not enforceable in the court of law, then naturally one cannot directly move to the court of law, or one cannot go to the court that this right is not being exercised by the person concerned. If there is no violation, but he is not able to exercise that right. So this has been divided into two parts, enforceable and non-enforceable. And when the third reading of the constitution was going on, at that time, the name has been changed and the rights which were marked as enforceable rights were put in part third of the constitution as fundamental rights, and those rights which were marked as non-enforceable or non-justiciable fundamental rights were put in part fourth as directive principles of the state policy. Now, when we talk about the part third of the constitution, then there are certain other points related to the fundamental rights regarding as to why we are requiring or what is the need of the fundamental rights. As I told you, this is inalienable rights. These are required to bring your capacity to the people at large. That's why it is needed. And then another point which is very important for the fundamental rights is that once you have this fundamental right, being the citizen of the country, do you also have the right to waive these fundamental rights? Can you waive your fundamental rights? आप अपने fundamental rights को छोड़ सकते हैं, उसका त्याग कर सकते हैं. So this was the question before the Supreme Court also, and a similar question was also brought before the US Supreme Court. In US also, the same question was asked whether the fundamental rights can be waived off. And the Supreme Court of United States that has decided that yes, you can waive your fundamental rights. And the case was Boykin versus Alabama. Boykin versus Alabama case, the US Supreme Court said that you can waive off your fundamental right. But when the similar question was brought in India, the decision of the Supreme Court was entirely different. It was in 1955. This is Barham versus State of Bombay, and 1955 Supreme Court judgment, and another is Basheshar versus Income Tax Commissioner of 1959. So when these two cases were decided by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was of the opinion that no, you cannot waive your fundamental rights because these rights are put in part third as a matter of policy. As a matter of policy, these are not given on a particular individual. These are the rights which are said to be social rights. These are the rights which are the group rights. These are the rights which are community rights. So you alone cannot enjoy these rights, though there may be some of the rights which can be enjoyed by individual, but at the same time there are certain rights which are being enjoyed by other individuals in a group also. So in that group you cannot waive that right. For example, if I talk about you, Article 19(1)(c). Article 19(1)(c) is a right which confers freedom on the citizen to formulate or to form the association. Okay. So this association cannot be formed by an individual alone. This is a right which is available in a group right. Okay. Until and unless you have more than two persons, one person than other, then you cannot enjoy this right under Article 19(1)(c). So you are talking about the waiver of the right. Other wants to come into the association, so it is not possible because this is a policy and this is a right which is available in group, in community also, and that's why this is a right which cannot be waived. So this was the decision of the Supreme Court in Barham case also, as well as in Basheshwar case in 1955, as well as in 1959, while the counterpart judgment of the US Supreme Court in Alabama, Boykin versus Alabama, was different, that they can leave these fundamental rights because the history of the Union of India and this United States of America is also reflected in these judgments. If you see the United States, that they have come together for the purpose of making a federation, and India is a country from where that federation nobody can secede, no state can secede. Because of that Article 1 of the Constitution, you see, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of state. No state can go out from that union. So this is the history of the Indian Constitution, and that's why these rights were also considered to be rights which have been brought in the Constitution as a policy, and that's why on the question of waiver, the Supreme Court's decision was that the rights cannot be waived off. Another point regarding the fundamental rights is that whether these rights can be suspended, there can be a suspension of fundamental rights. When we talk about the waiver, it means I am talking about my right to be waived. But when I am talking about the suspension of the fundamental rights, it means that some other authority, agency is to suspend your fundamental right. So what are those situations in which this fundamental right can be waived and suspended by the authority concerned? So there is a provision in the Constitution of India itself. You see that there are provisions regarding emergency. Though we say that ours is a constitution which is federal in nature, but there are certain abnormal situations also when the constitution becomes unitary, and these are the situations which are there in Article 352 of the Constitution. Article 352, which speaks about the promulgation of emergency. Now, never confuse that there is something like national emergency, because in books you will find that it is written the national emergency under 352. But when you see the Constitution of India, Constitution never proclaims it as a national emergency. It is promulgation of emergency on the grounds of war, external aggression, and armed rebellion. Armed rebellion after 44th Amendment. Prior to 44th Amendment, it was internal disturbance, which has been substituted by 44th Amendment. So my point here is that whether these fundamental rights can be suspended. Yes, these fundamental rights can be suspended. The second point, whether all the fundamental rights can be suspended. Answer is no, all the fundamental rights cannot be suspended. Third question, whether the fundamental rights can be suspended automatically when there is a promulgation of Article 352. The answer is that no, it is not automatically suspended if the grounds are war and external aggression. Okay, so for that a notification of the president is also required. So the effect of the emergency under Article 358 and 359 speaks about the suspension of fundamental rights. So prior to 44th Amendment, the fundamental rights could be suspended. Even Article 20 and Article 21 was also suspended. But during the emergency, that black period of emergency, you may be knowing that 25th June 1977, when that emergency on internal disturbance was imposed under Article 352 of the Constitution, at that time various persons, they were preventively detained, and infamous case has been brought before the Supreme Court, ADM Jabalpur versus Shivkant Shukla. Now this ADM Jabalpur versus Shivkant Shukla is also known as the habeas corpus case. Okay, so in that particular case, there were also various cases in the different high courts of the state, and 9 high courts in the country, they have gone against the petitioner in that matter. And then the case was decided by the Supreme Court of India in this ADM Jabalpur case. And one of the constitutional author and writer who has given a very good volumes on the constitution, Sirvai, H.M. Sirvai, he has written in his book that the decision of the Supreme Court in ADM Jabalpur case is considered to be one of the most great suffering to the Supreme Court and self-inflicted a wound on the Supreme Court itself. कि जैसे कोई अपने आप को स्वयं चोट मारता है, उस तरीके से सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये डिसीजन देके अपने आप को ही चोट मारी है. So this is something like a self-inflicted wound on the Supreme Court itself by this decision, because the Supreme Court in this case held that your right to life and personal liberty is the sole repository of the Constitution, meaning thereby that the right to life and personal liberty is conferred on the people by the Constitution. So if the Constitution would not be there, the person would not have the right to life and liberty, meaning thereby this is the decision of the Supreme Court. Okay, so this was the majority decision only. And there was one dissenting approach also, the dissenting opinion of Justice H.R. Khanna, and that is very important when he said that this is a country which is governed by rule of law. Even prior to 1950, that is the date when the Constitution was enforced. So even prior to 1950, the persons were having the right to life and liberty. This is not the Constitution which has conferred that the right to life and liberty. So you cannot say that during emergency it is being disposed of. Sorry. So what we see that Justice H.R. Khanna, who has given the judgment in this case in a minority or dissenting opinion, he was of the opinion that right to life and personal liberty is not something which has been conferred by the Constitution. This is a right which is inalienable right, which is available to every person concerned. And that's why when I started this, I said that fundamental rights are inalienable rights which are available to every human being. And this dissenting opinion of Justice H.R. Khanna became majority opinion in M. Nagaraj versus Union of India in 2006 Supreme Court judgment. When the court said that this fundamental rights are the limitations on the state. Fundamental rights are the limitation on the state. Limitation in the sense that a state has to protect these fundamental rights. A state cannot violate the fundamental rights. Okay. So when we talk about the fundamental rights, whether it can be suspended or not, in ADM Jabalpur case, that time it could be suspended, but after that judgment, the emergency lifted, then new government came into power and that amended the Constitution by 44th Amendment, particularly Article 352 and other articles at the same time. And the very important thing was done by that 44th Amendment was that now Article 20 and 21 can never be suspended even if there is proclamation of emergency under 352. So the point here is that whether fundamental rights can be suspended, yes, can be suspended through a notification of the President for fundamental freedoms, but Article 20 and 21 can never be suspended by the any of the notification or by any of the order concerned. So this is the answer on the suspension of the fundamental rights. Then another question which is important relating to the fundamental rights is that whether these fundamental rights are amendable or not. Amendable in the sense that we know that there is a provision in the constitution which speaks about the amendment of the constitution under article 368. So 368 confers the power on the parliament to amend the provisions of this constitution. This constitution means that any of the part of the constitution can be amended. Now, for understanding whether fundamental rights are amendable or not, we have to go back to see the judgments of the Supreme Court, though I am not dealing those judgments at length here because the amendment is also there in your unit 5, I think. So I will be discussing later on in detail, but only for the purpose of understanding whether these fundamental rights are amendable or not. The cases decided by the Supreme Court in Sajjan Singh, Shankari Prasad, and then IC Golaknath case. These three cases are important in the sense of the amendability of the fundamental rights. So initial two cases, Shankari Prasad and Sajjan Singh, there was nothing like that. Like other parts of the constitution, fundamental rights can also be amended. But when the case was brought in IC Golaknath in 1967, Supreme Court said that no, fundamental rights cannot be amended so as to take away or abridge any of the fundamental rights. So the power of the parliament was curtailed by this judgment of the Supreme Court in 1967. Now, when the fundamental rights cannot be amended, this was the judgment of the Supreme Court. And then to undo this judgment, 25th and 24th and 25th Amendment have been brought in so that the fundamental rights can be amended. Then this 24th, 25th Amendment along with 29th Amendment was again challenged in Supreme Court in Keshwanand Bharti case. Now, Keshwanand Bharti case, that is also known as the fundamental rights case and also basic structure case. So in this case, the largest bench ever of 13 judges by majority held that you can amend any part of the constitution, but you cannot violate, damage or destroy the basic structure of the constitution. So you see that after 1973 judgment of Keshwaran Bharti case, the fundamental rights are also amended. Right to property has been taken away and that has been amended, but the decision was that basic structure. Now the point is, what is the basic structure? So Supreme Court has given certain points in Keshwaran Bharti case that this may be the basic structure, this may be the basic structure, but the list is not complete. The list is not exhaustive. That can be added upon. That is an elastic list. So since 1973 till today, you see that the Supreme Court in various judgments have added so many other basic features to this doctrine of basic structure. So now what we see is that fundamental rights are amenable, but it has to be amended in such a way so that the basic structure cannot be damaged or destroyed. Okay, so the amendability of the fundamental rights in such a manner. Then regarding classification of the fundamental rights as to what are the different types of the fundamental rights. So we all know that we are having 6 fundamental rights now available to us. And Article 14 to Article 32, different groups of the rights are there. For example, right to equality is your first fundamental right under Article 14 to 18. A block of 14 to 18 confers a fundamental right to equality. Then Article 19 to 21, it confers upon you a right to freedom. Then 23 and 24 is a group of right which confers a right against exploitation. Article 25 to 28, a group of right confers the freedom of religion, right to freedom of religion. Then Article 29 and 30, these two rights confers a cultural and educational rights of the minority. And lastly, Article 32 confers a right to move to the Supreme Court, that is constitutional remedies. So these are the rights which are available to the person concerned, to the citizens also, because the classification of the rights, you see that some of the rights are available to the citizens and some of the rights are available to the person concerned. And that's why when you see the Constitution of India, you'll find that Part 2 of the Constitution speaks about the citizenship. So once you decide that are you a citizen or not, then further move to part third to enjoy those fundamental rights, okay, which are available to the citizen, because all the rights are not available to the persons. There are some of the rights which are available to the persons, but there are rights which are available to the citizens only. For example, Article 19. Article 19, which prescribes for 6 freedoms, those are available only to the citizens, and these rights are not available to the person concerned. Similarly, rights under Article 15, Article 16 are also available to the citizens. These are the rights which are not available to the person concerned. And Article 29 and 30 are also available to the citizens, any section of the citizens. So these are the rights which are available to the citizens, while there are certain other rights which are available to the person, be it Article 14, which speaks of right to equality, Article 20 and 21, which speaks of the freedom of the person concerned, personal life and liberty, and double jeopardy, ex post facto laws, self-incrimination. These are the rights which are available to the person. Then under Article 23 and 24, which speaks of the beggar, human trafficking, child labor prohibition, these are available to the person concerned. 25 to 28, which speaks of the freedom of religion, that is also available to the person concerned. So some of the rights are available to the citizens and some of the rights are available to the person. When we say that all the rights are available to the citizens, it's a correct statement. But when we say all the rights are available to the person, it is not a correct statement, because citizen is a person. Person cannot be a citizen in all the cases, because person may be a natural born person, person may be a legal person. Legal person means that the personality has been conferred upon the authority, that is a legal personality has been conferred upon the idols, the matra and all these things. In jurisprudence you must have studied in your LLB that the personality is one of the things which can be conferred legally. So that is also available to the legal person. So some of these rights are available to the legal persons, particularly in the matter of religion. You see that there are cases, the mathadesh and the idol, they have all been conferred with the legal personality, and these rights are available to them also. Then another classification of the fundamental rights is that the rights, some of the rights are negative rights, some of the rights are known as the positive rights. Now if you go through the language of some of these rights which are there in part third of the Constitution, then you will find that it starts with that the state shall not deny, the state shall not discriminate, no person shall be deprived. Okay, so these type of the language which is there written in the particular provision of part third, then these are termed as the negative rights. For example, Article 15 clause 1, it says that a state shall not discriminate between, okay, on the grounds of discriminate. Article 21, no person shall be deprived of his life and liberty. So Article 16(2), state shall not discriminate. So if we see that some of the rights which have been written in a way that the words start with state shall not deny, state shall not discriminate, person shall not be deprived. So when there is the use of these type of the words, they are termed as the negative rights, and the other rights are called to be the positive rights. So this is another classification of the fundamental rights in part third, that these are termed as the negative right as well as the positive rights. Then another classification of the rights are that the individual rights and the group rights. There are certain rights which can be enjoyed by the person himself or herself. There are certain rights which can be enjoyed only in a group. As I told you, I have given you the example of Article 19(1)(c) to frame to formulate the association. This is known as a group right. Similarly, Article 29 and 30, that speaks about any section of the society or minority. That minority institution has to be established for the purpose of what? For the purpose of preservance of their religious and cultural minority. So these are the rights which can be enjoyed only in a group right. These are social rights as well as the group rights. So but whatever rights are considered to be the social rights, those are put under the group rights also. An individual alone cannot enjoy that right. So this is another classification of the fundamental rights, which are known as the group rights and the individual rights, which are available to every person or citizen as the case may be. Then whether these rights are absolute rights or there are certain restrictions over these rights. So this is another classification. You see that some of the rights can be enjoyed by the person or citizen as the case may be, and there is no restriction, there is no limitation can be enjoyed. But some of the rights are such which are qualified, restricted or limited by the provision in the constitution itself. And the glaring example you see is that of Article 19. The freedoms under Article 19 are not absolute. All the freedoms are reasonably restricted. For example, 19(1)(a) confers a right on the citizen of what? Freedom of speech and expression. But that freedom of speech and expression is not absolute. It is restricted and limited by Article 19 Clause 2. Article 19 Clause 2, which says that obscenity, immorality, friendly relations with other countries, safety, security, integrity of the nation, defamation, incitement to an offense. So all these things, 8 grounds, they are there in Article 19 too. Similarly, 19(1)(b), c, d, every article is further restricted by 19(3), 4, 5 and 6. These are the reasonable restrictions. Then Article 21, when we talk about Article 21, it speaks of life, right to life and personal liberty. But that right to life and personal liberty again is not absolute, because it says that no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. That means it is restricted by those laws which are prescribed by the procedure. That means you cannot say by doing a murder, a person cannot say after being committed an offense that he is in jail, he should be brought out from the jail because he is having the right to life and personal liberty. Because that right to life and personal liberty is restricted by what? Procedure established by law. Okay, so some of the rights are said to be the rights which are absolute, some of the rights which are said to be the rights which have been reasonably restricted by any of the provision. But one thing which is important about the fundamental rights is that there cannot be any restriction, limitation, qualification on these fundamental rights by a government order, executive order, or by a statute. Okay, these are the fundamental rights which are having a highest pedal in the society, the supreme law of the land conferring these fundamental rights. So fundamental rights can be restricted only and only if there is any parliamentary amendment to the fundamental rights. Without parliamentary amendment, there cannot be any restriction imposed. So if you see and read the language of the reasonable restriction under 19(2), 19(3), etc., you see that no executive order can make any other condition or ground as restrictive ground for the use of these fundamental freedoms. Okay, so whatever is there, that can be done only through parliamentary amendment, amending the constitution, amending the very provision. It cannot be done by any executive order. The CM or the PM, or for that purpose any authority, cannot restrict the use of your fundamental rights. So these rights can be amended only by the parliament. It cannot be amended or it cannot be restricted by any executive order. This is how you see that the rights are fundamental in nature. Then there is another classification of the fundamental rights, that some of the rights are self-executory and some of the rights are requiring certain specific legislation for its enjoyment, for its exercise. For example, if we talk about Article 17 of the Constitution, Article 23, 24 of the Constitution, Article 15, Clause 5 of the Constitution, Article 21A of the Constitution, these are not self-executory rights. meaning thereby to enjoy these rights, a specific law is required. Okay. So when we talk about Article 21A, which confers a right to education, then that right to education is made available by law, by making the law. And for that, you see that in 2009, the Parliament has enacted the law, right to education, free and compulsory education to the children. Similarly, Article 17, prohibition of untouchability. There is a law right from 1950. Then Article 17 and Article 23, you see, the power to make the law resides only and only with whom? With the Parliament. Article 35 of the Constitution confers this power on the Parliament to make the law under Article 17 and 23 of the Constitution. Then we see Article 24, which speaks of the prohibition of child labor. There is a requirement of the law. Law has been enacted and later on, totally amended and modified very recently also. So the rights are self-executory. The rights are not self-executory. It means that self-executory means there is no need of any specific law. It is applicable by itself. While for self-executory, there is a need of any specific law. So this is the nature of the fundamental rights, and we see that this is how the fundamental rights are being directed against the state. When I'm talking about it is directed against the state, it simply means that all these fundamental rights barring 17 and 15(2), these rights are available against the state. And that's why when we see part 3rd of the Constitution, which speaks about, or which is titled or enshrined as fundamental rights, that starts with Article 12 of the Constitution, because Article 12 speaks about the definition of the state, and state is not a fundamental right. But why this state is in part 3rd of the Constitution? Only because these fundamental rights are available against the state, these fundamental rights are directed against the state. So one must know as to what constitutes the state. The state means what, against whom one can go to get the remedy for the fundamental rights. So this is how the rights have been made in the Constitution, part 3rd, Article 12 to Article 35 are there, which speaks about the fundamental rights. So next we'll be discussing some more fundamental rights, and this is how the justiciability is given by Article 32 and Article 13 of the Constitution. We'll be discussing all these state law, etc. But next I'll be discussing with you the preamble to the Constitution of India. Okay, so please have a